So my name is Tiffany, and I'm so excited to share my story with you all tonight, which I call the Insatiable Quest for Beauty. But really, it's less about beauty, and it's more about this idea of trying to be good enough, to prove that we have what it takes to be loved or accepted. And so as I share my story about a quest for beauty, I encourage you to start asking yourself, well, what's my quest? What do I think will make me good enough? Because it looks different for different people. So as I get started, I have to kind of start at the beginning in order for my story to make sense. So I was growing up as a little girl, and I was super boy crazy from an early age. In fact, my dream in life was to grow up, get married by the age of 20. And that was just my dream. I don't know why I wanted to get married so young. And so ever since I was a little kid, I was always asking myself, well, how do I know if a guy likes me? And so one day I was reading this book in which a girl named Rose fainted and a guy rushed to catch her. I was like, that's how. All these years I've wondered, and it's so simple. All I have to do to know if a guy likes me is to arrange a fake fainting scenario. And if he catches me, then he must like me. So I was playing soccer with some friends one day, and the other team got the ball, and my crush was standing right behind me, and I was like, this is the moment I have waited my entire life for. And so very gracefully, at least I thought it was gracefully, I just said, oh, they got the ball. And I just fell backwards. And I'm falling, slow motion, and it never crosses my mind that he might not catch me. So when I hit the ground, I was shocked. I was like, where did he go? Did he not see me fall? Oh no, he saw. Yeah, he's standing right there staring at me with a look of horror, and then he rolls his eyes and walks away, and I was like, dude, you just had the chance of a lifetime to marry me by 20. That was my first heartbreak at 11 years old, and he is so glad he did not catch me. So yeah, that was my story. So my parents, they were pretty smart. They catch on quick, you know? So they were like, girl, you are nuts. You cannot date until you're in college because you are crazy. And I was like, that's fine. It's true, I am. So that's okay, Mom and Dad. I don't actually need to date. I'm just going to get ready because I'm an A-type personality and a planner. So I'm like, I'll put together a list of all the things I want in this future husband at the age of 20. So I've got like his height and his hair color, his major in college, the instruments he plays, and at the end of my, 3-page front and back list, average sized, I added his name. So I get to college at the age of 17, and the craziest thing happened. I met this guy. Like down to his height, his hair color, and his name. It was nuts. It was actually kind of like that song, and I won't torture you by singing it because it's kind of annoying, but it was like, hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me definitely right now, like no maybe, like I'm waiting. So we started dating pretty much immediately, and it seemed perfect on the surface. Like he's a youth leader, and he's in this band that travels, and he's super cute, and like everything I ever wanted, right? But underneath that very perfect surface, it quickly became clear that there was a lot wrong in our relationship. And honestly, I just didn't want to see it. And if you don't want to see something, it's pretty easy to pretend it doesn't exist. You can almost fool yourself into thinking everything's okay. But the warning signs started with him telling me, I'm having a hard time falling in love with you because my ex-girlfriend is a 10 on the scale of beauty, and you're just not that attractive to me. I was like, come again? Like, I've never had a boyfriend, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to say that to your girlfriend, thought that was common knowledge. So I asked him, well, why am I not attractive? And he said, it's because your face is crooked. I was like, what? So number one, do people notice when other people's faces are crooked? Like, is this a thing? Like a crooked face police? I don't understand. And number two, I remember going home and just looking in the mirror and for the first time seeing this crooked face looking back at me. And it became all I could see in myself. And I don't know if you've ever had something that you didn't like about yourself, whether it was how you looked or, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not athletic enough, I'm not successful enough, I'm not nice enough. And suddenly that one thing that we don't like in ourselves becomes all that we see in ourselves. That's what this was for me. I let it define me. So I stayed with that guy. I should have run for dear life, but instead I stayed. And he had a certain way that he wanted me to look and dress. And It's kind of weird, but it's true. I was supposed to wear skirts or dresses with white stockings, with my hair washed with Pantene Pro V shampoo and conditioner, and then blow-dried but not straightened. And if I didn't look that very strange way, he would become upset or just leave. And so one night, my family decided to go midnight bowling with some of our relatives who were in town. And I was like, okay, I'm in college now. I've taken science courses. I've realized that if I wear white stockings to the bowling alley, midnight bowling, my legs are going to glow in the black lights. I will look like an alien, and that's weird. So I decided to wear what any normal human being would wear, which is jeans. So we go, and I feel totally cute and confident the whole time, and we get back to my parents' house afterwards, and my boyfriend just walks inside, picks up his backpack, and walks back out the door. And I was like, where are you going? Don't you want to stay and hang out for a little while? My whole family's in town. And let me clarify what I mean by hanging out, because in my family, hanging out means eating ice cream, and a lot of it. Does anybody here love ice cream? Okay, oh. I love you people. Yeah, we should have an ice cream party after this. So my family goes to the store, or they did at this time when all of us kids were home. They would go to the store and buy literally 30, as in 30, half gallons at a time. There's a separate freezer in our basement, and when people came over, you took out 8 different flavors, and you were supposed to take a scoop of each. And that's how we ate ice cream. And I'm like, you're not staying for that? That's my first clue that something is wrong with this guy, So he just walks out the door, and I'm like, what did I do? What's wrong? Why won't he even say goodbye to me? What do I do? I was like, I know. I'll follow him, because I used to be a stalker, but I'm not anymore. So I follow him out to his car, and I keep asking, where are you going? What did I do? And no answer. And right before he drove away, he turned and just looked me up and down and said, you're not giving me any reason to stay. And he left. And I felt like these cold hands just wrapped around me and started squeezing. And I was like, so if I'm not perfect, if I don't have it all together all the time, if I don't look the way you want me to, if I'm not good enough, then nobody is ever going to stick around. And I think that that's a human experience when someone we love, whether it's a friend or a significant other or a parent, and they walk out and we think, if I had been better, would things have been different? And that was the beginning of what I call my insatiable quest for beauty. And what does that even mean? Insatiable is something that can never be satisfied. It's like chasing the horizon line. You can run as fast and as far as you want, but you will never get any closer to it. It always keeps moving further away, out of reach. And that's what insatiable is. You can never catch it. It never satisfies your heart. And what's a quest? A quest is your holy grail. It's the one thing that you want more than anything in this world, and you will do whatever it takes to get it. And for what? There are so many insatiable quests. For me, it was looking a certain way, meeting a certain image. But there's the quest to be successful enough, to date the right people, to be popular enough, to have the right friends, to wear the right clothes, to be the right weight, to be rich enough, have the right house. The list goes on. And none of those things are bad, but none of those things can ever satisfy our hearts. And when we look to them to tell us that we're good enough, they leave us feeling empty and broken. So I set off on this quest for beauty, and it consumed me every second of every day. All I could think about was this girl in the mirror, and if she had what it took, if she was good enough. And I would compare myself with everybody else. I'd walk in a room and be like, I wish I had her hair and her face and her body and her personality. And I could see something I liked in everyone else, but nothing that I liked in myself. And I would feel so disgusted with myself and so filthy. And I would feel just like I was losing my appetite because I felt so gross. And then I started losing weight because of losing my appetite. And then that weight loss became addicting. And I started to think, maybe if I can just get thin enough, somehow that will make me good enough. As if the numbers on a scale or on the tag of your jeans can determine a person's worth. So I started trying to lose weight, and I would go as long as I could with as little food as I could until I got what I call these sparkling headaches. And it would feel like there was static electricity in my brain, and I'd get really dizzy, and then everything would go black. And I blacked out while walking, even while driving a couple times, because I wasn't getting what my body needed. And I remember in later years a doctor saying, would you ever feel guilty for putting fuel in your car? Then why would you feel guilty for putting food in your body? But I didn't see it that way. So I'm still with that guy. It's now the end of my sophomore year of college, and we are still together. He keeps leaving and then coming back and saying things will be different, and they never are, but I always believe him. And one day my dad has had enough. He's like, no, I'm done with this. So he picks up the phone to call my boyfriend, and my dad goes, if you ever come to my house again, I will call the police on you. And then he hung up, and I was like, whoa, Dad, like, goodbye, boyfriend. I think that one is over. But I will tell you this, just because I'm proud of it. My boyfriend then decided to send me flowers at my work. And so I went to work, I picked up those flowers, I went straight to the nearest nursing home, and I donated them. And that felt awesome. And then the relationship was really over. So I decided to transfer to another college at that point. And I was like, if I can get far enough away from all the memories, I will snap out of this living nightmare in my head. But the thing is, you cannot run away from yourself. I tried those, so I transferred to this college 4 hours away from my home, and I think everything will magically get better, but instead I feel worse inside. Because I was like, my friends are all gone. I don't have anyone I really know here. I don't like myself. I feel really like disconnected from everything I grew up believing. And I am single. Like, I'm 19 now. That gives me 1 year to find a guy, date him, and marry him by 20. This is coming up really fast. And I don't like being single or like who I was. And I started turning to food for comfort in what's called binge eating. And I would eat and eat and eat. And it was like my brain would be screaming at my hands to put down the food, but I physically could not do it. And I had never felt so helpless in all my life. And when the binge would finally end, I'd feel so mad at myself and so guilty. And I'd promised to do better at not eating the next day. And it became this cycle of binging and not eating, binging, not eating. And that cycle consumed years of my life. And honestly, I didn't think that I could ever be free from it. But it wasn't working in my mind. I was gaining weight from the binging, and I was back to a normal, healthy body weight, but that's not what I saw when I looked in the mirror. And I decided that I would do anything it took. And so one night, I thought I had the answer. I remember walking into my bathroom and kneeling down, and I could see my reflection, but I couldn't even recognize myself, because I was like, I would never do this, what I'm about to do. This isn't me. And I tried and tried to make myself throw up. And the worst part in that moment was that I couldn't do it. I'm so thankful for that now. But in that moment, I was like, Tiffany, even the one thing that you never wanted to be good at, you failed at that too? What a loser. I felt numb and filthy and vulnerable, and I had this thought in the back of my head, like, maybe this quest for beauty is not leading me on a beautiful path. Maybe it's leading me down a path far uglier than anything I have ever imagined. I wrote a song about it around that time, and this song is called Mask, and it goes like this. They say cry away the pain, laugh away the tears. I wish it was so easy to let go, but the pain is so intense that it's melted in my heart, and it just won't turn into tears. So I'll put on a smile, show the world a brave face. Maybe I'll deceive myself, and it'll all just go away. They say that I don't feel when my heart is breaking here behind me. Oh, and rescue me. I have loved with all my heart. I was weak and I was hurt. No one held me, though I could not cry. Would you take the time to listen? Hear my points of view. No, you only see your side. Yeah. So I'll put on a smile, show the world a brave face. Maybe I'll deceive myself, and it'll all just go away. Say that I don't feel when my heart is breaking. Here behind this mask, I'm waiting just for you. Oh, would you come and rescue me? I realized that I desperately needed to be rescued. I found this mask years later at Party City and for 99 cents, and I had to buy it because this is exactly the mask I wore all the time back then. It's pink, it's sparkly, it's happy, it's got it all together all the time, and that's what I wanted people to see. If I had decorated this, I would have put clothes on here. I thought I had to look a certain way. I would have put boys on here. I thought I had to be in a relationship to be happy, and if I wasn't, then there must be something wrong with me. I would have put an A+, kind of for good grades, but more for this idea of being perfect in all of life. There was no room for a mistake in my life ever. And I wore this all the time. 24/7, this is as deep as you got with me because this girl had it together. But this girl was falling apart. The funny thing is that I didn't tell anybody about all these struggles for a while. I didn't think anybody else had ever experienced these things. I thought people would judge me, they wouldn't understand, and so I held it all inside. But what I didn't know until after my quest for beauty was that 20 million women and 10 million men in the United States are diagnosed with an eating disorder. And that's just people diagnosed with an eating disorder. There's so much shame and secrecy and denial as part of the disorder that many people are never diagnosed. In fact, I was never diagnosed myself. I kind of slipped through the cracks and didn't know what was going on inside me. And I remember seeing a nurse, and the school nurse at college one day, going in not feeling well, and she weighed me and looked at me and asked, "Are you anorexic?" And I looked at her and said, "No." What I was thinking was, there is no way I am thin enough to be anorexic. And that's part of what the eating disorder is all about. I didn't know what an eating disorder was even. It's basically, to put it very simplistically, this intense fear of gaining weight and using unhealthy eating habits to get there. And there's also this idea of body image dysmorphia that's a part of it. And that's basically where, when you look in the mirror, what you see in the mirror is not what anybody else would see. You see someone who's maybe larger than you actually are, or someone who's maybe less attractive than you actually are, but you're not really seeing yourself or what anyone else would see. So I didn't know that I was just one of millions who were also struggling with this. And I didn't know that body image dysmorphia, it doesn't affect just people with eating disorders. Research shows that it actually affects almost every woman and many men in America. It's a common part of life now, living in our culture with all the media around us. And I think it goes a lot deeper than even just what we see in the mirror. Because a lot of times when we look at ourselves as a whole person, we don't see all the positives. A lot of us look at ourselves and we're like, "Oh, I'm dumb. Oh, I'm not pretty. Oh, I'm a failure." And we let those few things that we don't like about ourselves begin to define us as a whole person. And we kind of lose sight of the positives. The Dove Beauty campaign actually did a video about this idea. They had a sketch artist come in, and some of you may have seen this video, but they had a sketch artist come in and he drew what he thought a woman would look like based on how her friends described her. And then they had the woman come in and sit behind a curtain, and the sketch artist drew what she would look like based on how she described herself. And then they showed the woman both pictures. And every time, the way she described herself was so much more negatively than how others described her. And others were so much kinder. And it can very easily become almost an abusive relationship with ourselves. All this negative self-talk, like you're stupid, you're worthless, you're a failure. It's easy to have these thoughts in our head all the time. And it's interesting because if somebody else talked to us that way, if we were in a romantic relationship and that person talked to us that way, I hope we would realize that that's not normal and that's not right and I should get out of that relationship. But so many times it becomes normal for us to talk to ourselves that way and to be in what's essentially an abusive relationship with ourselves, interestingly enough. What I didn't know until after my quest for beauty was that being too thin has drastic consequences. Can you hand me my phone, James? Being thin has drastic consequences. I grew up in a culture, thank you, that idolizes being beautiful enough, idolizes being thin enough, really. And we see it in all the ads and the media and the music and the magazines, and we start to think it's normal for everyone to look that thin. We start to think, oh, I should be able to look that way too. I should be able to look like the models who are thinner than 98% of the population. That's normal. And so it's like this unrealistic expectation that we put on ourselves. And as we idolize thinness, we also are in a culture that is constantly talking about obesity awareness. And we hear all the time, if you're obese, you can suffer all these health issues like diabetes or heart attack, but nobody stops and talks about the dangers of being too thin. So I'm going to share a few of them with you. These are some of the dangers of basically starving yourself to death to be thin, of malnutrition from trying to lose weight. The dangers: it can lead to respiratory infections, kidney failure, blindness, heart attack, dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, osteoporosis, heart problems, fainting spells, chronic bruising, insomnia, dry hair and skin, brittle nails, hair loss, disruptions in blood sugar, which can lead to diabetes, anemia, arthritis, liver failure, infertility, depression, pancreatitis, weakness, seizures, and death. In fact, there's been some recent research that has shown that people who are slightly above a normal body weight live the longest. People of a normal body weight live the second longest, surprisingly. People who are overweight live third longest, and people who are underweight die the youngest. It's funny, we never hear that in our culture. The other thing I didn't know until after my quest was how early this is programmed into our heads. This is brainwashed into us in our culture. I didn't know that 81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of becoming fat. They shouldn't be thinking about that. And a lot of this research shows is because of the media culture that we live in, but I wonder how much of it is also just the role models around us. I mean, how many of us are like the way I've been, just talking negatively about myself? And when girls grow up and they see the women in their lives and in their communities just always talking down about themselves, it's easy to think that that's normal. And I used to think that talking down about myself didn't affect anybody but me, but I couldn't have been more wrong. I remember being in college one day and standing in my friend's room and just standing in front of her mirror and critiquing my body. I was like, I hate my belly, it's too fat. I hate my legs, they're this. And I'm like going down the list, and she just stopped me and was like, Tiffany, when you talk about yourself that way, I think you're really pretty, and so it makes me wonder how you see me. And to be honest, I wasn't thinking about her because the only person I was thinking about was myself, which is embarrassing. But when I stopped to think about it, I was like, I thought she was really pretty, and I often compared myself with her and thought, I wish I could look like she did. And so I figured that definitely the way I talked about myself would not bother her at all. But the way we talk about ourselves actually does make an impact, even when we don't realize it. And it makes me wonder if there were even just a few people who would stand up, guys and girls alike, to stand up and be role models and say, I'm not going to talk badly about myself. I'm not going to do this negative self-talk. I wonder if that could change the course of these 81% of 10-year-olds' lives, and if that could, in turn, change our world. So I want to talk with you today about how to become that role model. And really, it's even more than that, because to become that role model, we got to start with ourselves. And so I want to share with you 4 very practical things that helped me through my quest and that I think can help you with whatever your quest is, whether it's a cycle of bad relationship after bad relationship, or whether it's an eating disorder, or whether it's trying to be successful enough to feel good about yourself. Whatever it is, I think these 4 things can apply to any quest. And the first one is this: to find a mentor. So a mentor is not a word we really use often in our culture. So what does that mean? Basically, a mentor relationship is this very honest and open relationship with somebody where you share your struggles and you let them kind of speak into your life. And you're looking for 2 basic characteristics in the person who is your mentor. First, they should be a little older than you, because then they've already been through the season of life that you're in and they have some wisdom for that. And then second, they should be someone that you look up to. So not somebody who's perfect, but somebody who you're like, I like a lot of what I see in their lives, and I could learn a lot from this person. And so finding a mentor really makes such a difference when we find that honest relationship with someone older and that we look up to. And I remember after I wrote that song, Mask, I very slowly started realizing something needed to change. And I started working on some stuff in my own life, but I still hadn't really told anyone what I was going through because I was so embarrassed. And I started realizing that it was kind of like there was poison trapped inside me. And until I was able to talk about it with someone, it was going to stay trapped inside me. And I was just stuck in my quest, and I couldn't move on. And so I started looking for a mentor, and I'd meet with some different people, try to find someone I click with. And I remember one day sitting down over ice cream with my pastor's wife out in Rochester. And I just shared with her, I'm really struggling with trying to date different guys because after my first boyfriend, I'm so scared. And so I go on a date with a guy and I feel like I'm going to vomit all over him the entire time. And therefore, for his sake, I never return any future calls because I know he wouldn't vomit on him because I'm so scared. And so I told her about this and she's like, it sounds like there are some deeper issues going on. Let's start getting together and meeting. Wise women. So we started getting together every month, and I would share things with her and her husband that I'd never shared with anyone. And I would let them speak into my life, and they'd just be like, Tiff, do you hear what you're saying right now? What you're believing and saying about yourself, that isn't true. Or do you hear how this relationship affected you? Do you realize that that's not normal to be in a relationship like that? That is not a good relationship. And I would not be free today from my quest if it wasn't for them. So I really want to encourage you. I know it can take time and hard work to find that mentor, but really do make that investment because it's worth it. And if you don't know where to start in looking for a mentor, you can talk with teachers at school or a school counselor or your doctor or a youth leader in a local church, or you can talk with your parent or a friend's parent. And those can be some great places to get started and find someone that you really connect with. The second thing that I had to do was to start fighting the mind battle. And this was the hardest part of this whole process for me because really overcoming our quest is all about figuring out our thoughts and how to take control of those, right? And that is so tough to do. So there were 4 main steps that really helped me with this. And the first was to ask myself, okay, what am I feeding my mind? Because everything that we take into our mind throughout the day, it's all mind food, whether we realize it or not. So conversations that we have, or being on social media, or the music we listen to, or the movies we watch, it all becomes mind food. And mind food can make us stronger and feed us the protein and veggies and fruits, or it can make us weaker. And then there's some mind food that's just filler. I think of social media as the potato chips of mind food. There's nothing wrong with it, but if it's all you eat, you're gonna feel pretty lousy. So it's important to think, what mind food am I feeding myself, and is it enough of the good stuff? The second step was to ask myself, what are the lies that I'm believing about myself? And this is tough because when you're used to believing something about yourself, it feels true. It feels very normal. So this was where my mentors came in super handy. But some of the ways that I was able to figure out if something was a lie was to say, does this undermine my worth as a human? Or is this always putting me down? Is it always negative? And if those things are true, then it's probably a lie. So I started figuring out some of the lies I was believing, and one of mine was to say that nobody's going to love me if I'm not perfect. And then I had to ask, okay, so what's the truth? Instead of that lie, what's the truth that goes with it? And there's different ways you can look for this, and this will be different for different people. But for me, there were 2 main places where I looked for this truth. And the first was in my Bible. So I was raised in a Christian home, and so I was like, if God really made me, and if he really loves me like he said he did, then I want to know what he has to say about me. So I'd start reading it, and I found in my Bible these verses about how it said God always loves us no matter what, and will never leave us. And so I started being like, okay, so that's the truth to counteract my lie. The other place I looked for this truth was in relationships with people who cared about me. So my mentors, my family, my friends, and even asking them, like, what do you see in me? Because all I see in myself is the ways I've messed up, but what do you see in me? And having them call that truth out of you. So you find your lie, you find your truth, and then the fourth step is to replace the lie with truth. So here's where you can write it down. I'm an A-type personality, so I made like a chart, and on one side I put the lies, and on the right side I wrote down the truth to combat those lies. And then whenever the lie would come in my head, I'd be like, okay, you feel true, and I want to believe you, but I know you're not, and so now I'm going to remember this truth, and I'm going to choose to believe that even though it doesn't feel right yet. And it's really hard at first, and it takes a lot of time and practice, but over time it really does become easier, and fighting the mind battle becomes more natural. The third thing that really helped me was to celebrate my victories. Because beating a quest, or overcoming an eating disorder, or getting out of a cycle of bad relationships, it's all like learning how to walk again. So if you see a baby who's gotten up and taken its first few steps, nobody in their right mind is going to be like, and if the baby then falls, right? No one's going to be like, you stupid idiot baby. I cannot believe that you just fell. It's going to fall. That's part of learning how to walk. An important part of the process is learning how to pick itself up and try walking again. But isn't that how we treat ourselves so many times? Like, oh, I was doing so good and I just messed up. I'm a failure. And then it makes it so hard to get back up again because you feel terrible. Isn't that what we do to ourselves? But no, people around that baby, when that baby falls, they are all cheering. They're ecstatic because they're like, you just took your first few steps and you had the courage to get up off your butt and try walking. That is amazing. And that's how we should treat ourselves. So let's say, for example, that I went 2 whole weeks without binge eating, and then I binge ate again because I was really lonely on a Saturday night without a date or something like that. It'd be easy for me to say, I cannot believe you just fell. Are you ever going to get your act together? You're just always messing up. But instead, what I should do is say, wow, I just made it 2 whole weeks. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to dance and I'm going to celebrate that. And then I'm going to say, wow, what made it possible for me to go 2 whole weeks this time? Because that's amazing. And then I'll ask, what tripped me up at the end of those 2 weeks? What was it that made me fall back into the binge eating? And learn from that and then move on. Because the thing that distinguishes people who get better from their quest from people who don't is not whether or not they fall, because they all fall. It's which one stands back up every time they fall. And the final thing that I want to share with you, the final practical step, is to know and really believe with all your heart that you are loved just as you are. I remember being home for a break from college, and I was moping around my parents' living room, and my dad noticed that something was wrong. And he came over and said, Tiffany, what's going on? What's wrong? And I said, Dad, I feel like I have disappointed you and Mom so much that you'll never be proud of me again. And he came over and gave me a hug and said, Tiffany, I don't love you because you're good enough. I love you because you're my daughter. And yeah, you've made some stupid mistakes, but you know what? It doesn't change the fact that you're my daughter, and that's why I love you. And I realized in that moment, like, we don't all have earthly dads who would say that to us. But I realized that the God I believe in, who I think of as my heavenly Father, that he was saying that to me and to all who want to hear. Like, I don't love you because you're good enough. I'm not up there waiting and being like, get your act together first. Like, come on, you keep falling down. It's like, I just love you because I made you. And I just want a relationship with you. When I saw that kind of love, it changed everything. I always tell myself I'm not going to cry, and then I do, and it's so annoying. But this mask at this quest, it was all about trying to earn love, prove that I was good enough. When you see a love that says no, you have nothing to prove. It does something to you. Get it together, Tiffany. I can't talk and cry at the same time, so. Yeah, and so the other way I surrounded myself with that love was in my relationship with God, but also with people in my life. And so surrounding myself with friends and family and my mentors who would just tell me like they loved me and I had nothing to earn and they were always going to be there for me. And when you build your life on that foundation of knowing that you're loved just as you are, it's like all these other voices can keep coming in, whether they be in your head or from people around you. But you just look at them and you're like, no, I'm building my life knowing that I'm loved. And I'm going to measure everything else against that. And those were 4 things that made all the difference in my life. Finding a mentor, fighting the mind battles, celebrating your victories, and knowing that you're loved. So I'm going to share a song with you, if I can stop crying totally. And it's called Feeling Like I'm About to Break. And this song is about trying to let go of something. And I feel like it really applies to our quest because it's so hard to let go of our quest. It's like we feel so comfortable with it. We feel like it gives us our identity. And it's so hard to just let go of it and to say, you know what, I'm better off without you. That's what this song is about. And I take courage in the chorus of the song, you'll see, in realizing like, I'm trusting that God loves me and he has a plan for my life. And just really putting my hope in that. And so I want to share this with you. And as I share it, I want you to ask yourself these 2 questions, if you can remember them. Number 1, what is my quest? Or my mask, in other words. What do I think will make me good enough? What do I try to define my life by? What is my quest? And the second question is, what's the next step I can take toward letting go of that quest? So what's my quest and what's the next step that I can take to let go of that quest? And while you think about that, I'm going to share this song with you. Feeling like I'm about to break. I'm feeling like I'm about to fall. And I don't know if I'm a fool who will look back with regret, or if I'll fall into something that's right. And I don't know, and I don't know, I'm terrified. Oh, but when have I been one to go with whatever's comfortable? When have I been one to fear the unknown? My God has a plan for me, a future and a hope. This I know, oh, this I know. I'm feeling it's time to let go, but I don't want to be left all alone. And I don't have another plan, no one's here to hold my hands. But if I don't give up, how will I know? I think there's more, I think there's more. I have to go alone. And when have I been one to go with whatever's comfortable? When have I been one to fear the unknown? Oh, and my God has a plan for me, a future and a hope. Oh, my God has a plan for me, a future and a hope. My God has a plan for me, a future and a hope. This I know, oh, this I know. Thanks. You know, who I am today is so different than who I thought I was going to be. I am so glad about that. I no longer struggle with disordered eating, which is amazing to be free from that. I didn't think there was freedom for a while, but there is. And if you're struggling with that, there is hope. There is life on the other side, and it is rich and full. And I'm not as thin as I used to be. And I also realize that that is a good thing, and I'm thankful for that too. And I get to travel around the country and share this story, and let me tell you, there's nothing like getting to help others. And I realized that if I had stayed on my quest, I could never have done that. It was so worth giving it up and worth the 7-year journey it took me just to get from point A, where I was, to point B, which was no longer struggling with body image, no longer not liking what I saw in the mirror, no longer struggling with an eating disorder. 7 years to get there, but it was so worth the fight to be able to say that I like what I see in the mirror. And you know, I wanted to get married by 20 because I thought that somehow if I had a ring on my finger, it would make me worth more. But I'll be 30 in just a couple months here, and I just got married 8 months ago to James, who you met and is awesome. And you know, I'm so thankful that I got to wait all that time, surprisingly, because a lot through my singleness, it gave me time to learn that whether or not I'm in a relationship, whether I feel pretty or whether I don't, whether I have it all together or whether I make mistakes, I will always be loved. So thank you.